Hello, everyone. Blue Star Saber here with,
The MangaReader.
and we're here to discuss the 369th chapter of My Hero Academia, a chain of events across the ages, or as I like to call it, one for all, full power. All that stuff. As we follow up from the last chapter where we learned that the second user's quirk was Gear Shift. Mm-hmm. How's that, Etienne, where it allows Midoriya to go at 120% of power? How does it do against Shikaraki's, one for all? Let's find out. The chapter first begins with a flashback to when it appears when All for One has defeated the second user and has probably is about to kill him and all his allies and all that stuff. As interesting, while the second user seems to be all bloodied and beaten, the first user, All for One, seems to be crying of some sort. But he ends up questioning apparently the meta ability of the hero. And apparently there's a bullet that's being fired behind him, but All for One crushed it. As he's questioning how that gear shift thing should only seem to work on small abilities, mocking it for its power and all that stuff. As he thinks to how the second user's resistance was always meaningless and insignificant and all that stuff. Though, despite the fact that, all that, we see that the second user ends up smiling at him. As I think All for One thinks it was meant to be some, insignificant worm, if you will. As Midoriya is now, as we cut to the present, as Midoriya has just done his massive blow to Shigaraki. The Shigaraki All for One starts to see the ghosts of the previous users within Midoriya, from what I can tell. Or at least that's implying, as we see both his brother and the second user. And he seems to imply that he can see them now from at least their thoughts and all that stuff. As Midoriya continues to use the quirk Gear Shift, as we get an explanation that much like the other meta abilities, Gear Shift, Strength alongside, All for One, managed to got stronger as its stockpiled and all that stuff. And apparently making it more diverse in what it can do and all that stuff. As apparently there's a pure, simple might built up in One for All and all that stuff. As Midoriya is now preparing for his next move using the Detroit Smash. Apparently, they get an explanation that apparently they can warp the very laws of governing reality. As Midoriya uses a move called a Quintuple, perhaps arguably causing his strongest smash, causing quite the disturbance around the area and all that stuff. And then he sort of spins like Sonic and dashes like him as well, if you ask me. Shigaraki seems to think that this is a lighter blow than before. And all that stuff. No, apparently thinking he didn't have the glow to build this up and all that stuff. As Shigaraki prepares to charge another giant fist of him, summarizing that he probably won't be able to do what he did before and all that stuff. And able to time his next move. But Midoriya counters with low gears. A second user says how gear shifts possess the speed without abiding by the laws of the interior.
Inertia.
Inertia. Thank you for correcting me. As he ends up mocking All for One that he should already know this. As then Shigaraki All for One ends up trying to counter, causing a smoke disturbance from the thing, which ends up mocking Shigaraki. He ends up calling it pathetic, but he ends up flying above, I think from the Black Whip. It's clear that he's being pulled up from it. And Midoriya apparently adjusting his timing, he can use the Force Danger Sense to detect the threat, and then add the 6 smoke screen to obscure his vision. So that's arguably what Midoriya did first. I should have realized that. And then using the 7th user's float to provide some instant height. And then using the 5th's black whip, he catches her, see Shigaraki unaware and all that stuff. And finally, earlier with the quintuple attack he gave, apparently he can refill with Farjin, with the 3rd user's Farjin, and cause another blast of overdrive courtesy of the 2nd's gear shift, as we see all the previous users behind him and all that stuff. Even like a silhouette of All Might, if you will. This is like as it's like making each making a sort of pose as Midoriya is doing like a sort of combined attack of all their quirks, if you will. As the 2nd user tells All for One about how their Meta's abilities were never what he should have been wary of. Rather, he should have feared the reason why someone would choose to use their gifts. Saying how the true power relies on someone's own intent to use them. And it goes about how this is why, as Midoriya says, he's giving it everything as go. Let's see, thinking back to the 5th user, saying how Midoriya will complete All for One. As Midoriya ends up turning to All for One, how he doesn't get, as we end up seeing all the other heroes from what we've seen from the previous here, such as Millennium carrying, I think, is a classmate. Let's see, Nejiro. Let's see, Sun Eater with Makiro, I think, and Edshot, and I think Best Genius with Bakugo. As a brief scene of all them. And then you have Shigaraki All for One telling Midoriya to be silent and calling Midoriya and the others maggots as Midoriya finishes his attacks, his punch, saying how he won't get to hurt anyone else. And the 2nd user finishing his line about how people call them quirks. As you see, we see a huge hole inside Shigaraki. As you realize, and I think you see this first use of All for One, One for All, saying how they're resonating with, and about how One for All and All for One, going back and forth, and apparently they can see each other. As he talks, as I think, as I think it's now Lumenium, it could be Lumenium, but apparently someone is saying that it could be the first user, was it All for One? But yeah, as someone says how the young man with the bean eyes was correct, which is clearly referring to the Lumenium. It's probably the first user. As the course of the chain of events of this battle has shaken the balance between Shigaraki and All for One, causing a disturbance. But it might actually be the 2nd user. I'm getting confused now. I'm a poor explaining summary, aren't I? As the 2nd user tells Midoriya this is his moment, don't forget what apparently the Shimura, the 7th user, said. Telling him not to take it easy just yet. Telling him to give everything a go and the witty business of quirks. Actually, this is Shigaraki going on about Midoriya about quirks and all that stuff. Him complaining about how he hasn't used his own quirks yet. He's yet to use the true value of this body. Cursing Eraserhead and his group for enabling him to use his quirks. And not to mention the fact that they've trapped him in the sneaky thing. As he thinks about how the whole sequence of events have led to this moment. And then it seems some light starts sparkling out of him from all that stuff, and his hair gets all spiky. With Eraserhead thinking that he has some trick up his sleeve. With Shigaraki saying not yet. Let's see. As I think As he ends up, I think, commenting about how his brother was right, how the chain events would lead either to victory or defeat. He still thinks about how victory is still within his grasp as we cut to the final page with Spinner all hulking and all that stuff and drooling and all that stuff, and as he looks into the side on the battlefield, ending the chapter. So, what do you make of it?
Funny enough, it felt like this whole time I've thought we already reviewed this chapter for some reason, but obviously we didn't.
We were meant to do it last week, and but unfortunately, when the time came, I either did it too late that neither you or Lucky Chi was able to join us.
So that meant that there was a break somehow?
Yeah, there was also a break, ironically enough. There will be a chapter this week, of course.
Right. I was just like, man, I felt like I read this a week ago, and obviously I did. But it's just like, man.
Yeah, just didn't get a chance to review it.
Yeah. I've read it like 3 times now, apparently. I don't know what the hell he was crying for. I mean, some people thought that it was because the guy was part of his army, but no, he was part of the resistance, wasn't he?
Yes, he was the second user was the leader of the resistance, with the third user being his right-hand man, and they rescued his little brother.
Right.
If I had to guess, let's see, the only thing I can think of is the reason he's crying is because he's angry and upset at the same time and blaming the second user for apparently what happened to his brother and all that stuff. Because the only thing that All for One had a soft spot for was his little brother, at least.
Yeah, at least that's what they made it sound like. Yeah. I guess so. I guess it really doesn't matter. I'm sure they won't ever really hint upon that, but
who knows? Perhaps he's also a bit angry that the quirk that he helped create within his brother is being used on a guy like this who he considers beneath him. Given how he easily stops the bullet trajectory he aimed at him and all that stuff.
He did call it a pea shooter, but yeah.
Yeah. But I do like how he seems to think about this monologuing and like, okay, now how an insignificant ability like this with a hero like that has become so deadly, and it's interesting that he can now actually see the ghost projectiles of One for All and all that stuff.
Well, we've gotten to a point where, yeah, all these quirks are suddenly now kind of not obeying, per se, they're not as grounded as they used to be. Then again, All for One and One for All both never really fit the normally grounded territory of
True.
of
Not to
quirks.
mention that the two quirks were tied together in a way.
Yeah, I mean, All for One was One for All was created by All for One, so it's kind of interesting to know how that works. But I don't know. I mean, at this rate, maybe Deku might have had a chance against, or maybe it would have just been plot stupidity, but he might have stood a chance against Stars and Stripes' ability. Maybe.
I mean, granted, probably for the best that we never find out.
Yeah, especially since, again, All for One makes things more broken, so who knows, maybe he would have had, like, more than two rules that he could have created. I still can't believe that quirk is a quirk, though. I mean, it's like everything else up to that point was at least obeying some laws of, like,
Yeah, Stars and Stripes quirk had to be limited to 2 abilities.
It had to be limited because it was busted. But I mean, the reality is that her quirk, I don't even know how one would even begin to imagine, or how would anyone figure out that that's what their quirk was? Oh, yeah, like, I'm allowed 2 rules.
I don't know. Perhaps let's see. If I had to guess,
Then
she
again, it's
ordered.
just like stains. It's like, how would you have known that drinking the enemy's blood would paralyze them?
Yeah, but who knows? Perhaps when she was younger, she gave 2 certain commands when you were touching something, and then suddenly they happened.
I guess so. I mean, at least hers made. At least that was the weakness. She had to touch something.
Mm-hmm.
But
Mm-hmm. But yeah.
but the problem with that is that she's always touching the air, so you can you can take of that what you will.
Mm-hmm. But
But
yeah,
anyway, back to this.
yeah. So I do like how gear shift. Let's see, allows Midoriya to spin and speed like Sonic the Hedgehog.
Right.
I wonder if Koei's been playing Sonic the Hedgehog lately.
I know Frontiers is soon to come out, so I don't know if that was just a little nod to
Possibly.
that.
I also kind of like this new move we've seen called Quintuple, which arguably, from what can see, might be the strongest shockwave punch that Midoriya has ever done. It
Yeah, we
could be.
don't really know how much it. We don't really know how much damage it ultimately did because the show never shows it after the fact. But yeah, quintuple. It's just because of the speed at that point. But yeah, it looks like of all the quirks, the second and third users had probably the best ones. They still sucked on their own, but now that they're boosted, they're easily like the
Yeah.
best of the bunch.
Yeah. And luckily, it wasn't as OP as some people thought it would be.
Right. I mean, it's still kind of busted that you can essentially
Mm-hmm.
warp yourself to be on the speed of sound, but
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I do like how the second user ends up mocking All for One about how he should probably know these abilities by now.
right. You should know our abilities. Just because they're different doesn't mean you can't remember them.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, smokescreen sucks in terms of an ability. I mean, it's good for defense, but
By itself, it can't do much.
yeah. Then you got Black Whip, which is maybe on an offensive tear. I guess a Black Whip would be like the third best ability
Mm-hmm.
because it gives you some long range while also still being a kind of weapon.
Yeah. I do like how they're able to Midoriya is able to combine all these quirks with, let's see, one for all and all that stuff. And does like this perfect sort of combination of dragging Shigaraki up and then punching him.
Well, that's the one thing Deku was always good for in this series, analyzing abilities. So he kind of knew how to make them function.
Mm-hmm.
I guess some people pointed out that the way he was kind of using gear shift, it was the way Bakugo usually goes at fighting.
Yeah,
His,
it does feel like Bakugo's explosion movements and all that stuff. But yeah, I definitely say my favorite panel is all the users of one for all, as Midoriya is preparing his final attack.
Yep.
I do like how he thinks about how the fifth user told him that he's going to be the one to complete the quirk.
Yeah, it was only a matter of time.
Mm-hmm.
But beyond that, then you get the hole in the chest, and then you still got Shigaraki's evolution, and then yeah, I don't know what Spinner's gonna do.
Yeah. Yeah, well, before that, before we get to Spinner, I just want to I do like how as the second user is commenting and mocking All for One for underestimating all that stuff, ends up giving Midori advice about all what to happen, especially with like how I like how he calls the bean-eyed young man. Let's see, Lumenium that and all that stuff, and how during this fight, All for One and Shigaraki seem to be losing their balance with each other.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is Midoriya's time to shine. But of course, Shigaraki refuses to go down, and he seems to activate some weird light thing. I still can't tell what it is really, but yeah, like it said, it seems to have drawn Spinner's attention, so it's clear that let's see, Koei is finally going to do something with Spinner.
Yeah, probably.
So yeah, so it seems like the next few chapters will probably be focused on whatever it is Shigaraki has asked Spinner to do, and I assume that he's going to try and have Spinner save him. Now, how he can do that, I don't know. But
Yeah, I don't know either.
No, granted, All for One has given Spinner apparently an upgrade, given how he's all muscular and strong. I wouldn't be surprised if he's maybe given him other quirks as well.
Yeah, there's something there, man. There's something there.
Mm-hmm. Is there anything else you'd like to say, or is that it?
Yeah, I don't really think there's anything else I can answer. I don't know. Hopefully, the next chapter isn't just oh, hey, we showed Spinner at the end, but we're gonna still keep showing this Midoriya fight. Although it's weird that we're showing this fight now because I don't know how the hell anything else is gonna get concluded.
Yeah, apparently, from what it seems like, Shigaraki is going to eventually use his quirk abilities. So,
Right.
let's see. Might be how he's going to get Spinner to help him and all that stuff. But
Yeah, Spinner's gonna have to somehow assault wherever.
is.
Yeah.
Let's see. That will be interesting. But yeah,
Although I'm pretty sure it's protected, so yeah.
Because it seems like Midoriya is using all his power right now, but Shigaraki isn't. But I guess we'll just have to wait and see. But again, it might be leading up to like, okay, Midoriya did quite well against Shigaraki without his quirks. But now he has his quirks, he needs help from someone like Bakugo to finish the fight. Because I'm pretty certain Bakugo's coming back.
That could be the case.
Mm-hmm. But yeah. Let's see. So yeah, overall, I think I'll give this chapter probably a 7 to 8 out of 10. It's a nice action chapter, but not much else to cover really.
Yeah, anywhere from 7 to 9.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, there's definitely some highlights. Seeing like, let's see, a little brief history of, let's see, what All for One and One for All second user. Let's see how it ended up clashing, and how probably you saw the second user's death, or at least implied. Let's see how he dies from this fight. Well, seemingly already transferring the third user's quirk to let's see, One for All to the third user and all that stuff at this point.
Sure thing.
But yeah, it's just nice way of showing how, let's see, All for One underestimated the quirks of like the previous users, and they've come back to bite him and all that stuff. But he has one last desperate attempt to survive, which somehow involves Spinner. Overall, it's a pretty good chapter. It mainly focuses in one area, except for like briefly of like the pilots and that one bit with like I think the Revolutionary Army and Sabo. But yeah, so all right. Okay, clearly I've lost track of time. Okay, clearly I'm falling asleep as now I'm talking about One Piece.
What are you doing?
Yeah. Lack of sleep, man. Lack of sleep. I probably got to end this yeah. Like let's see, so where was I? Ah yes, Spinner about to enter the battlefield. Or Spinner apparently helping all that stuff as Midoriya tries to finish off Shigaraki. Now he has the perfect chance. So yeah, overall 7 to 8 out of 10 chapter. MangaReader, thank you for joining me, and I look forward to seeing you when we review the next chapter and all that stuff when it comes out.
Sure.
Mm-hmm. and hopefully a much earlier time on my end. But for now,
You had a
I'm
chance
blue.
earlier. You had like all day, man.
Yeah, it's politics got in the way. I'm not sure if you heard, but my country's on the brink of collapsing. But anyway, but that's not here and there. But I'm Blue Star Saber,
I'm MangaReader.
and we are signing off. Thank you, everyone, and goodbye. Plus Ultra.
Plus Ultra.
Yeah.